Good morning, and thank you for joining our October Accessibility Working Group meeting. Of course, we appreciate you taking time out of your day to be with us so that we can collaborate, identify those common accessibility issues we're all tackling, leverage our shared expertise, and work
You own
towards.
a business, then you need a virtual marketing assistant. And that
Sorry about that. Today I'm excited. We're joined by Valerie Morrison. She's the Document Accessibility Services Manager for the Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation at Georgia Tech. Um, she's going to be discussing document accessibility with us. Sorry. She'll be defining accessible files, talk about key features, some of those including selectable text, clear reading order, headings, and alt text for images. So this is something I know that we've all been really curious about with document accessibility as we're looking at document remediation. So I'm really excited to pass it over to Valerie.
Okay, thank you so much, Erica. I really appreciate the introduction. And as Erica said, my name is Valerie Morrison, and I work as the Document Accessibility Services Manager at CIDI at Georgia Tech. CIDI stands for the Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation. And so what we do is work on files day in, day out to make them accessible. Our primary customer historically has been students in higher ed. So we work with very complex STEM material, trying to take a math or a biology textbook and make all of those diagrams, equations, charts, graphs, footnotes, everything accessible to a student with a screen reader. And so I'm going to kind of, walk you through our process and how we make files accessible, what accessible documents mean to my team and how we transform them. As we approach these Title II updates with trying to make sure that everyone at state agencies and institutions across the state, across the country, are compliant with their document accessibility. We're working more and more with state agencies, with Access Georgia, with all kinds of entities outside of the educational space. So today I've broken down my approach. I don't have that long to talk to you all, but thank you again for inviting me to this working group. So I really want to target three aspects of accessibility. One is just a general definition. What do I mean when I talk about accessible? Because people use the word accessible all the time, right? If a building is accessible, if the reading level is accessible, if I can access the PDF, that doesn't, just because you can get your hands on a file doesn't mean that it is an accessible document in terms of helping people with different disabilities to read it or listen to it. So we're going to go into some definitions. Then I'm going to focus a little bit of time on Microsoft Word accessibility and provide an overview of how you make your Word documents accessible. And starting with an accessible Word document, if you can, is the most accessible way to begin. And then if you can't, if you have a PDF or a file that you've inherited or it's a team document and you can't start with Microsoft Word, you just have a PDF that you're working on, we'll look at how to check that PDF to make sure it's as accessible as possible and some steps you can take to make it more accessible. So first, we're going to talk about accessibility. And my definition is accessible documents can be read aloud by a screen reader, period. That's it, right? The text is accessible. Any images are described with alt text description that will be read aloud by the screen reader. So students or individuals who are blind or have low vision, who are relying on a screen reader to read aloud their content, either from a website or a document, they have that content available to them. And the content should be easy to navigate with great headings or bookmarks for easy navigation. So some key features of accessible documents: text can be selected. If you try to highlight the text, it highlights correctly, and it's not just an image of text. If you've ever tried to copy and paste text from a PDF document and you realize that you only have the crosshairs as your cursor, that it's just an image of text, nothing is selectable. Well, that's not going to be accessible to someone using a screen reader. They'll just hear the word graphic, and that's it. So you want your text to be highlightable, selectable. The reading order should be clear. Hopefully the main body text is not interrupted by lots of footnotes and tables and figures, and that, you read a paragraph at a time, then you break, you're not having lots of interruptions. When you're highlighting text, you're not highlighting across columns, for instance. You want accessible headings or bookmarks for easy navigation. Again, your images described with alternative text. And you want to make sure that your design elements, such as color and font, are accessible, which I'm going to give you some examples of in a minute. So some barriers to accessibility, a little bit obvious from what I just read off. So if your file is missing accessible headings or bookmarks, it's very hard for someone just using a screen reader to navigate or know how your document is organized. And if maybe they don't have motor skills, they can't operate a traditional mouse, or they're just using their keyboard for navigation, they're going to need those accessible headings or bookmarks to jump from place to place. They can't just scroll endlessly with their little mouse wheel like a sighted person could. So images should have alternative text, hopefully written by a human or at least edited by a human. Confusing reading order is a barrier. If there are flashing images or animations, distracting backgrounds, poor color contrast, and even on the meta level, if your language complexity is very, very high, that also could be a barrier to people
Valerie, I'm
understanding.
sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay.
It doesn't look like the slides are advancing on the screen.
Oh, no. Well, I'm glad you told me. I'm so sorry. Let me try sharing just,
If it doesn't work on your end, I don't mind to slide the share the deck, and you can tell me when to advance.
all right. Are they advancing now?
They are not. I'm still just seeing the document accessibility slide.
Thought we had it all worked out. We got here early and everything. I apologize. Okay, I'm just gonna pick screen one. And all right, do you see them advancing now?
Yes, that's great.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I'm not sure why. I tried sharing it as a slideshow, but it's on my other monitor and it is not advancing. So I'm not quite sure why this is an issue today and not in practice. All right, so some barriers to accessibility: files without headings, poor color contrast, language complexity. So in terms of who uses accessible documents, I think that's important for people to conceptualize why it's so important that documents be accessible. When I first started working at CIDI 12, 13 years ago, I came into this job as a former instructor. And I thought that I fell for this kind of this problem of logic, I guess, that all disabilities were visible, right? That I would know when a student in my classroom had a disability, but many disabilities are invisible, right? So I thought that this job, I was making accessible documents for students who were blind, period. And that was it. Honestly, that only accounts for about 10% of our orders for accessible textbooks or documents. So blindness, color blindness, and low vision, that is a large audience, but the much more vast, larger audience for people who use accessible documents are people with different learning disabilities that you might not know, someone has. So they might have dyslexia, dyscalculia, that's where the numbers shift or turn, dysgraphia, ADHD, they have trouble focusing. And if you look on the right-hand side of this slide, hopefully you're seeing the actual slide I'm looking at now. If you look on the right, there's a student who is listening to his content be read aloud on a tablet, and it's being highlighted on the page sentence by sentence, and it's helping him focus, and he's getting auditory input and visual input at the same time. So there are many individuals who really benefit from having that text input as well. Just as a person aging and a person who loves to read, if I turn those subtitles on to a movie or a TV show, I'm never turning them off. I rely on them. I really like that text input. Being able to read is helping me understand better. Um, Students or individuals who have head injuries, trauma, or cognitive disabilities, people who are primarily auditory learners, the aging population who are having trouble with their eyesight. So many different vision related things can happen as we age. So this huge group of people it's much larger than you might initially think, or people who are using screen readers to access content. The best practice in accessibility is to bake it in from the very beginning. It is much more time consuming, and you have to make a lot more decisions and hard choices and sacrifices and compromises if you make your document without thinking about accessibility, and then you have to go back and fix it or remediate it or retrofit it. It is much easier to start with an accessible Word document, and then you can save that as a PDF, or you could convert it into an HTML file or an EPUB or whatever the person might need. So we always try and encourage people to think about accessibility as something that you start at the very beginning. So turning towards Microsoft Word accessibility, I have this checklist here, and I've given the PowerPoint to Erica, and hopefully she could share it with you all. I don't want to read through this entire list, but I thought of this slide as kind of a leave behind resource for everyone in the working group, that you could go back and think about these when you're putting together your own Microsoft Word documents. And we're going to cover a bunch of these, right? They range from headings to color contrast to how to make contextual hyperlinks. And so we're going to go through several of those today. So the very first one, you want to make sure that you have accessible headings in your Microsoft Word document. If you're creating a Word document, I used to do this all the time by just making my headings bold or a larger font, which is great for people visually, but it doesn't make it accessible for a screen reader. So for a screen reader, to make your file accessible, you need to use the heading styles on the home ribbon in Microsoft Word. And they're right there in the middle of the ribbon. And your main heading should be heading 1. And then under that, you can have heading 2, heading level 3s, however many you want, to organize your content and have it so that someone can jump from section to section within your document. So to create a heading, all you need to do is put your cursor on that line or highlight the line and then select the heading level from the home ribbon. And it allows individuals to easily navigate. Someone using a screen reader such as JAWS, which stands for Job Access with Speech. The JAWS screen reader is very popular. I think someone can press Insert F6 and it will pull up the list of all your headings in the document and start reading them out loud. Someone can listen to all your level 1 headings, all your level 2 headings, all your level 3 headings, and they can get very granular and easily with their keyboard jump to the content they need. In order to see the headings in your document, you'll go to the View tab in Microsoft Word and make sure that the navigation pane checkbox is checked, and then all of your headings will appear on the left-hand side of your Microsoft Word document, and you could see them right there. And you can also click on them to jump to that part of your document yourself. So it's kind of like subtitles. Once you turn them on, you rely on them. Once you turn on your navigation pane in Microsoft Word, you'll start using it, right? I start using it. I use it constantly to jump from content, from place to place in my documents. Once you have your accessible headings in Microsoft Word, when you save it as a PDF, they will turn into accessible bookmarks. So any work you do accessibility-wise in Word, if you save it as a PDF, it's going to keep and retain those accessibility features. Same with adding alt text to images. So here we have an image inserted into a Microsoft Word document. This is an image, a map of the United States about sales tax from state to state. And so to add alternative text to this image in my document, I simply right-click on the image and I chose View Alt Text from the right-click menu. If you don't see the View Alt Text option, you can also select Picture and then select the Alt Text tab, and it will take you to the same place. Here you'll see I have a text box on the Alt Text pane on the right-hand side of the document where I simply typed in a description of the map. And without getting too detailed, I would say just 1 or 2 sentences of brief alt text is the gold standard when describing images. And make sure that you use proper grammar and spelling and punctuation, and try not to put in too many acronyms, right? So, or abbreviations. You want to type out things so they will be read correctly by a screen reader. And then also, whenever you're describing an image, try to keep it as 1 paragraph. Don't hit enter to create new paragraphs, because the screen reader might skip the 2nd paragraph and think that it's done. Okay. Choosing accessible fonts is a key accessibility consideration. Simple fonts are the most accessible. They require the least focus to read, the least cognitive load. And so you'll see on the right-hand side, I've typed out Georgia Technology Authority 6 times. And the first 3 fonts are more simple fonts. They're called sans serif fonts, which means without detail. These are very simple, easy to read, especially for long documents. And then the bottom 3 fonts have a little bit more detail. They have little flourishes or extra details on the letters. Those are a bit harder to read in large quantities, right? If you're reading a 20-page document, if you can imagine reading 20 pages of that script font, it would be very difficult and slow the auditory or slow the cognitive processes down. So you want to have a simple font, 12-point font size minimum, and avoid large amounts of styled text, lots of capitalized text, underlined, bold. It's hard to read in big quantities, large quantities. If you can imagine, like if you've ever read a contract where half of the page is italicized, it takes longer to read and is less accessible. In terms of color coding, never rely on color coding alone to convey meaning. If you use color in your design, remember that not everyone processes color in the same way. So these color wheels on the slide show 5 different common types of color blindness. Well, the first one is thought of as quote unquote regular vision, right? Without color blindness. And then the next 4, the next is deuteranopia, which is green blindness. The next is red blindness, then blue blindness. And then if you can't see green, red, or blue, you are seeing shades of white, black, and gray. So depending on the colors you choose in your document, people are going to be seeing those colors in different ways. The best way to make sure your document is accessible is to make sure you have a high color contrast. So if you have, see in this slide, I have a dark blue heading of the words color coding and a white background that have a very high color contrast. So no matter what, even if someone can't see blue or can't see green, there is enough of a contrast between my text and my background that it will show up and be easy to read for someone. If you're not sure about your colors and your color choices, especially if you have a document or a PowerPoint or something that has like a colored background, you can use all kinds of online free color checker tools. This screenshot is an example of the color contrast analyzer tool that is created. It's owned by TPCI. Oh, I think it's TPGI. I have a typo on my, I'm just going to fix it right here. TPGI, capital G. TPGI.com, and you can use their color contrast analyzer. They abbreviate it as CCA. And what that does is you can highlight your text, you can highlight your background, and it will show you in this inset box on the right, the smaller inset box. It's called color blindness simulation, and it will show you what your text and background color choices will look like to someone with these different types of color blindness. So you just always want to make sure you have a high color contrast ratio, and WCAG standards are 4.5 to 1 as the golden number that you want. You want 4.5 to 1 or higher as your contrast, right? 5 to 1, 6 to 1, 7 to 1 is best. That's going to reduce eye strain for people reading your document. Using the accessibility assistant in Microsoft Office is a great tool. It is not the be all end all, right? So I always try and show people whenever I'm telling people about the accessibility assistant, it is wonderful, but the best is just educating yourself about document accessibility, because the assistant does not check everything, it can't catch everything, and it is not as thorough as a person who knows about accessibility. But it is a great tool to draw your attention to different parts of your document, to think about color contrast, to think about, are any of your images missing alt text? And so in order to use that checker, you'll go to the Review tab and select Check Accessibility. And it will open up the accessibility assistant on the right-hand side in a separate pane of your document, and you can click on each section. This screenshot shows you there are different sections for color contrast, to show you your missing alt text in your images, table accessibility, document structure. It looks like there are no headings in the document. So it'll point you towards how to fix it and make your document more accessible. All right. Moving on to PDF accessibility. Once you have your accessible Word document, you can save it as an Adobe PDF. Do not print to Adobe PDF, because if you print to Adobe PDF, it's going to flatten all your content and treat all of your pages like an image. And so your text will not be highlightable. You'll be wiping out all of your accessibility. So when you save your document, and since I'm not presenting in presentation mode, if I were to print my PowerPoint or save my PowerPoint as a PDF, I'd go to File, and I'd go to File, Save as Adobe PDF. I would not print. I would not share as Adobe PDF link. I would save as Adobe PDF. And that is going to retain your highlightable, accessible text. It's going to turn your headings into accessible bookmarks for easy navigation. It's going to keep all your alt text for your images. And so always save as Adobe PDF. All right. Again, I have a checklist here as a leave behind resource for you. These are all the steps that, or not all of them, but these are the main steps, the big steps that we take in the Document Accessibility Services unit when we are making sure that PDFs are accessible, highlighting text, creating bookmarks, checking the color contrast, adding alt text to images. All of these steps might be a helpful checklist for you when you're working on your own documents and evaluating them. So if you have inherited a PDF and you did not create the source document, and you just have a PDF that you got from a friend, from a colleague, from your boss, from the internet, in order to evaluate it, the very first step would be to see if the text is selectable. So you're going to highlight the text. In this example screenshot of 2 columns of text, you could see that I've highlighted some content and it is highlighting. So it is accessible text and it's highlighting 1 column at a time. Sometimes you'll see, depending on the way that the PDF was created or saved or whatever program was used to make it, sometimes there's a lot of background information in the PDF file with the structure tags that will complicate the reading order and mess it up. So sometimes you'll see you highlight the text and it will highlight across columns so that the screen reader would read a line from the column 1 and then a line from column 2, which would just be incredibly confusing for someone listening and inaccessible. So if you can't select your text or highlight it at all, or if it's highlighting in such a strange reading order that it's not accessible to someone, then we would recommend that you put your document through optical character recognition or OCR software. And that's a long story. And we do that in-house at CIDI. The OCR engine that we use is Abby FineReader. That's what we think is the gold standard in terms of document accessibility. So you'll check to see that your text is highlightable, make sure that it looks like it's in a correct reading order, ensure that columns are read down and not across. The next thing you want to check is to make sure that you have bookmarks. Just like in a Word doc, you want those headings for easy navigation. You'll check the bookmarks pane, and we are doing all of our PDF editing in Adobe Acrobat. I think Adobe Acrobat Pro. I'm not sure if there's a difference, but we call it Acrobat. So we use Adobe Acrobat, and we are opening the bookmarks pane in Acrobat to verify that there are bookmarks present. We'll often add information like chapter 1, chapter 2, if it doesn't automatically come through, for easy, organized bookmarks. if you, again, if you have them in your Word doc, they will automatically come through in your PDF when you save it as Adobe PDF. If you don't have them in your PDF, you can simply highlight text on the page and hit Control B, and it will turn that into an accessible bookmark and open up the bookmarks pane. You can also right click and go down to Add Bookmark. And then you can create structural bookmarks for navigation throughout your file to make it more accessible. We also recommend that you try to match your page number with the actual page number. So if you have a document that has Roman numerals at the beginning, you want those to be read as Roman numerals. And so in order to edit your page numbering, you can open the page thumbnail view and right click. You can select all of your pages or just some of your pages and right click to change your page numbers. This is especially helpful on long documents, or if a teacher says read pages 150 to 200, you want to make sure you're reading the exact right pages because that's a lot of pages. If there's an instructional booklet that goes along with a tax document and it says see field 13B on page 76, you want to make sure that when someone types in 76, they get to the page mentioned or specifically talked about in that instruction. So pages and pagination make for a more accessible document. Adding alt text just as important. And so if you have a PDF that did not have alt text for images, you can turn on the accessibility tools in Acrobat, select the reading order tool, right click on an image and describe your image. You can also find all the images by running the accessibility report, and it will flag all the images needing alt text. Just like check the accessibility assistant in Word, it will flag all the images missing alt text and you can add them there as well. I like to add my alt text as I'm scrolling through the document because it helps me provide more context when I'm writing my description. Structure tags are a long story and we don't have a lot of time. And I don't want to go too in-depth and in the weeds, but I've mentioned tags a couple times when it comes to PDFs. You want to make sure that you have tags present in a PDF file. And if you don't have tags present, you want to auto tag your PDF file. If you have created an accessible Word document and saved it as a PDF, it will have tags. It should have structure tags that come over from the Word doc when you save your file. But depending on where you got your document, how you saved your document, the tags might be empty. And the tags panel, and I have an example of a healthy tags tree on the left here. This tags panel is what the screen reader relies on first when it is reading the content aloud. And it's also a great way to designate your headings, show the screen reader, this is a figure, this is a table, this is the header row of the table. This is a caption that belongs to this image. So your structure tags in a PDF are doing a lot of work. And without giving you a very long and very exhausting training on tags and how to make your tags accessible, I would just say if you don't see any tags, if you see this on the right-hand side, you see no tags available, then I would right-click on this no tags available and select add tags to document. And that's going to auto tag it. It's not going to be perfect, but at least there will be tags present. And if you've ever had trouble with a PDF, and tried to highlight content or tried to copy and paste content, and there are all these weird symbols instead of text, right? Like you highlight a paragraph and you copy and paste it into your Word document, and it's just gibberish, or there's all kinds of strange things going on. It's because there's very strange things going on in the structure tags behind the scenes. These structure tags are far more complicated, and what they're doing is they're also preserving the format of the page. So like a Word document is going to be very linear, and in order to change the format, you have to do a lot with spacing, and the PDF is designed to always be static, right? And so the structure tags are helping with that, and it's far more complicated. All right. Like Microsoft Word, Adobe Acrobat has this wonderful accessibility report that you could run. You open the accessibility tools and click on accessibility check, and it will run this report. By default, everything should be checked, so it's looking for any possible problem. And you're never going to clear it because there are some things that always need a manual check, but it helps you go through your document and look at accessibility issues. It will flag errors of color contrast. If you haven't selected a language in the document properties, to help the screen reader know that this should all be pronounced with an English or American accent, not French or Spanish. It'll just point you towards all the things you need to click on in Adobe to make it more accessible. And then what I want to leave you all with today is just the idea that accessibility takes time. What I've encountered over and over again is a lot of people think that accessibility is just kind of an afterthought that can be done. You hand it over to someone and then they just go beep, boop, boop, and they check a few boxes and a computer automatically makes it accessible. And that is sometimes that can happen, but the majority of the time, 99% of the time, it really takes someone going in there and reformatting or recreating a table in an accessible way, or describing images is very time consuming. It takes a lot of time to write and a lot of time to think about it and edit. So there's really, unfortunately, not yet, there's not a magic wand or instant tool to fix documents that are inaccessible. So, and remediating files. So if you just don't consider baking in your accessibility from the beginning, you're costing money and time, either your own or someone else's, to fix those documents. And with the Title II updates, the impetus is on all of us to try and make sure that everything that we post is accessible. So try not to wait to the last minute. Sometimes it can take hours, sometimes it can take days to fix inaccessible files, especially if maybe it was print to PDF at one point, or the way that the PDF was created, we have to put that document through optical character recognition. That can take days in order to fix that. So try to make sure your documents are as accessible as possible from square one if you can. And then I would also say that writing alt text is probably the majority of what my team spends its time on, because that really just takes the most time in accessibility. And it takes a lot of practice. And it's often best to have a team to work with, other person who can edit your work, see what you missed, or catch your mistakes. So it's a group effort, and I'm here to help guide or consult or answer any questions. I know Erica and Will, everyone I've talked to at GTA has been very supportive and interested in accessibility. And so it is a lot of work, but you have people in your corner trying to help.